syllabus has already come. So only one chapter, data structures, you can leave for the time being, students. Data structures is there for term 2. Except data structures, now you have to pay more attention to functions. Okay, data structures, both the chapters you can skip for the time being because those have been included in term 2. So you have to pay more attention to Python, revision tool, functions. Okay, so this functions chapter already we are about to complete, and in continuation with this I'm going to take up modules also, user defined Python modules, and we have to pay more attention to file handling, okay, which is the major, which will constitute the major part of term 1. So let's begin with today's class, and I will start your extra class sessions also. I have to take a permission for that. In 1 or 2 days, I'll take the permission and I'll let you know about the extra class sessions, because without that, we won't be able to complete our syllabus. Okay. So don't worry. It's like I'll take a class every day after 11 a.m. Not from 11 to 12 because I already know your maths class is there. From 12 to 12:45, tentatively this is the time. Right now nothing is official. Once it is fixed, I will let you know. Okay, start. So we are going to see passing parameters. Okay, that is how we can pass parameters to functions. Passing parameters also have another name, that is arguments. How to pass parameters? Okay, students, are you all able to see the screen? Please give me a quick feedback.
Yes, ma'am.
And my voice is audible because I'm going to disable mics for everyone right now. Okay. Okay, good. Just give me a call on my phone if give me a call on my phone if you suddenly stop seeing the screen, right? So passing parameters to functions. Parameters are also known as arguments, right? So we will start with one program over here. To accept one second. Write a function named simInt to accept principal amount, rate of interest, time period, and calculate and return the simple interest. Right? So we are going to write this simple program first. Now, how do we start with this? So DEF, name of the function, simp_interest, and it's going to accept three values: P, R, and T, principal, rate, and time from the user. Okay, so it is going to accept these three arguments, these three values in the form of three parameters, three formal parameters, P, R, and T, and simply return what? The calculated simple interest. Very simple at that. And here we can assign values or we can ask values from the user. So quickly I will be asking it. The principal amount. Enter the rate of interest, time, the time period. right? Three things I have asked from the user, and now I'm going to just create a variable si and call the function simpint, pass the three values and print the simple interest. Si. A very simple program at that. Let's run the program, enter the principal amount, rate of interest, time period, and we get the simple interest. Fine. So here in this, you can see that we passed three arguments. Now, students, there are three types of arguments. Why I wrote this program is because you will now understand the difference between the three types of arguments through this program code. So three types of arguments, or we can say formal parameters, are there. What are they? Number one, the first type is positional or required arguments. Also, these are mandatory arguments, that is, you cannot omit these arguments or parameters during function call. It is mandatory to provide these parameters during function call. Second is default or optional arguments or parameters, I will write here. These are parameters which have a default value and which can be omitted during a function call because Python picks up their default value to do the work. And last is keyword are parameters. Parameters are also known as named arguments or parameters. Using the term parameters and arguments interchangeably. Parameters is when the name of the variables, name of those parameters are specified in the function uh, statement, that is in the function definition. And arguments is the term which we use when values are passed to these parameters, right? So three types of arguments are there: positional or required, default or optional, and keyword parameters. Now, what are positional or required parameters? Students, positional or required parameters are those which we have been seeing so far. Like over here, you can see that P, R, and T. These three are what? Positional or required parameters. I just paste this program here. I will explain it to you. Okay, just a second. I'm taking short. Look at these. Now I have these three parameters P, R, and T. So this P, R, and T, these are what? These are the required or mandatory arguments. That is during the function call over here in this statement, when you are calling the function, you are providing all the three arguments. Like this, you write si equals simint P, R, and T. So these three arguments which you have provided over here, these are what? These are positional arguments, right? Because they are compulsory, you cannot omit any one of these arguments. If I try to omit any of the arguments, what will happen? Like here, I just remove T, okay? And now if I try to run the program, you get an error message. Simint missing one required positional argument, that is T. Two are given, and that too they are given in the specific order, that is, you can see it is P over here, right? So it is principal, rate, and time. So you need to also send the values according to this order, right? That is, the first one should be for principal, second one should be for rate, and third one should be for time. You can send it in any order, right? Like if I write here R and P, that means whatever is the rate of interest, you are sending that first. So rate of interest will get sent to P. Just a second, okay? Just give me a moment. Sorry for this. It was an unavoidable message which I was getting from the school. So I couldn't ignore it. Sorry for that. So here, if I just exchange the values, so whatever is the rate of interest will be sent to principal. Whatever is the principal will be sent to rate. Although this program, it will execute. Why? Because both principal and rate, they are uh, because these arguments will accept the data. Both are numeric values, they will be accepted, and it may even give you the correct answer. But the thing is, it will not work for most situations. If there is a situation where one argument is a character type argument and the second one is a numeric argument, at that time you will face problems, right? Because you might want to do a different work with the character type argument and a different work with the numeric argument. So the first thing is the order of positional arguments should always be the same. The order of positional arguments same as the order of the arguments passed during function call. So you have to keep this in mind while calling the function. Order of arguments should be the same. So these were the positional arguments. What about the second category, that is default or optional arguments? What are default or optional arguments? As the name itself, it specifies firstly these arguments are can be omitted in function call. While you are calling the function, these arguments can be omitted and they have a default value provided during function definition. Let's see what are they. So here, suppose I want time to be a uh, default argument. So right in the definition of it, I will provide it some value. Like the default value for time which I have provided is 2. So during the function call, the user can pass principal and rate, and he can just omit this third argument, that is time. Okay, so what will happen if the third argument is omitted? Python will automatically take up its default value. And if any value is provided by the user, that is, if the user provides the new value for time, this new value for time will replace this default value for time. It's only given such that if in case the value is omitted, if the user doesn't feel like passing the value for time, so already it will take up the value from its formal parameter list. So such arguments which can be omitted during function call, and those which can be provided a default value. And one more thing is there, they always follow the positional argument. They will always follow the positional arguments, and all arguments towards the right side of default arguments shall be arguments. That means default arguments should always be kept on the right side of the positional arguments. Means in a function definition, if there are a number of positional arguments, default arguments, then you have to make sure that positional arguments come first and then only the default arguments. Firstly, because Python is going to give an error if you don't maintain this. And secondly is because if suppose I am passing the values in this way, that is, I am passing the values like this, sim int, and instead of p, if suppose I write here the rate of interest first, I write 5.4 as the rate of interest which I am passing. Second is I am passing the value of time, that is 5, and third is I am passing the value of principal amount. So because of the order, 5.4 will be considered as what? Principal. Second is 5 will be considered as time, right? So the 5 will be considered as, sorry, not time, but rate of interest, because the first one over here is principal, second is rate of interest, and third one is time. And for this, for time, it will accept what? This. Okay, so that is why your answer may be wrong. Now, because here the formula is like this, you might get the correct answer. But in case of some other, like if compound interest had to be computed, in that case, you might have got an unexpected answer. And moreover, Python will give you an error if you do so, right? So if I suppose do the, right now, if I am providing all the three values, that is, if I write here 5.4, it will give me some answer, right? It may even give you the correct answer. Why? क्योंकि तीनों को multiply करके 100 से ही divide करना है. But how it is going to accept it? 5.4 will be accepted as principal, 5 will be accepted as rate, and 20,000 will be accepted as time. Let me run this and show it to you. Although this is asking for some value, so I'm just going to hide this statements over here, and let's run the program. You are still getting the correct answer, because in the formula, everything has to be, all these three values have to be multiplied and divided by 100. According to formula, it is correct, but had it been some other formula, we wouldn't have got the correct answer. Now what I'm doing is, I've passed, you think that, okay, I will first pass time. So I'm passing time as 5. Second, you think that you want to pass your rate of interest. So you write rate of interest and you omit your principal amount, right? So what will happen in this case? If I run the program, you get a simple interest, that is 0.54, because still it is taking up 2, it is accepting 5 as principal amount, 5.4 as rate of interest, and 2 is considered for time period, right? If I omit one more, what will happen? So if I just provide 5 over here, sync int is missing one required positional argument r. So you can see that there are two required positional arguments. One is p and one is r. T it is not considering. That is at most what you can avoid only one argument, right? If I just change its position here, like I'm writing p here and r here, and let's try to give some values. I'm giving 5 as time period, 20,000 as principal, and 5.4 as the rate. Non-default argument follows default argument. So you can see that you cannot write the default argument before the positional argument, right? So this is one requirement. All positional arguments will always follow all the default. All default arguments will always follow the positional argument. Next is the third type, that is what? The keyword or named arguments. What are keyword or named arguments? Arguments, these arguments would be passed for both positional as well as optional arguments, that is default arguments. You can pass these arguments for both positional and option arguments. They have, they take up names of their formal parameters in function call. That is, if I have to pass the values now, what I can do is, if you think that you deliberately want to change the order, that is, first I will send time, then I will send, or I won't send time, but I want to send rate first and then principal. So you have to first see what is the formal parameter name for rate in the function definition. It is r. So within the function call, you will write r equals 5.4, comma. Now I want to send principal, that will be equal to 20,000, and I can omit the default argument. Remember, default arguments, if you are omitting them in the function call, you have to specifically maintain the order. You have to specifically keep it after the positional arguments. So let's run this and see. We are getting some answer, that is over here, because we have changed the order here, but we have named the argument, right? This, we have named the argument, and the name of my definition is this. So P is going to match up with principal. As you can see over here, R is going to match up with rate because we have already provided the names of the arguments here. And T is of course the default argument. So its default value 2 will be considered for calculation. But if you want to pass any value for T, you can also pass it in between these two arguments because you are providing the name of the argument over here. If you are specifically providing the name of the argument, then you can change the order according to your requirement. Like this, you get the answer, right? So order doesn't matter over here, but then if I want to give a value on my own, like 5, R 5.4 will go for rate of interest, to 20,000 will go for principal, but this 5 will go for the time period. Why? Because this you have kept it after the positional arguments. आपने दोनों positional arguments के बाद 5 को रखा है, तो वो किसको जाएगा, टी को ही जाएगा, क्योंकि पहले दो आर्ग्यूमेंट्स क्या हैं आपके, रिक्वायर्ड आर्ग्यूमेंट्स है, और वो ऑलरेडी आपने उसको यहाँ पास कर दिया है. बट नाउ इफ यू राइट इट दिस वे, providing 5 over here, let's see if it runs. Simpint got multiple values for argument p. Look at this very carefully. Now, what is the error in this statement? Now, you can see the first argument you have, although you thought that you are passing time, okay, but this 5 will be accepted for p because the position of p is a positional argument. It occurs first in this list. Then it is also getting another named argument, keyword argument p. So that is why it is saying now, because you have not provided t equals 5 over here, the first argument will be considered as the positional argument p only, and then it finds p again over here. So that's why it is giving you this error, got multiple values for argument. So that is why you should always keep the required arguments. There is a convention which goes that all the named arguments or keyword arguments as well as positional arguments should be kept first, and all the default arguments should be kept last, right? So now if I change it, मैंने यहाँ से इसको change किया, I write 5 over here. This will, okay, positional argument follows keyword argument. Just a second. Here it gives me an error that positional argument follows the keyword argument. So I have to provide the name over here, that is t equals 5, and then only it gives me the correct answer, right? Let's solve a question related to this. Now there are certain rules, please keep this in mind. And Python states these are the rules for combining all three types of arguments. Python states that in a function call statement, an argument list must first contain positional or required arguments, followed by any keyword argument. Keyword arguments should be taken from the required arguments, preferably. That is, you should always try to keep the keyword arguments as the required arguments, although this is not a very hard and fast rule which you have to follow. You cannot specify a value for an argument more than once. And having a positional argument after keyword argument will result into an error, right? So always all the default arguments they have to follow all the positional argument. So this you will understand as you go on solving questions. Now I am enabling your mics. There is a question here. Doubts I will solve at the end of the class, students. Let me complete some syllabus first. First, we'll take up this question here. Program to calculate simple interest using a function named interest that can receive principal amount, time and rate, and returns calculated simple interest. Do specify default values for rate and time as 10% and 2 years respectively. So how are we going to do this? Just send me the, in the chat box, just send me the top line, the function header for this. What you are going to write. Function header means only this part, only this part. Like I have written def sim int prt. What should I write over here? Can anyone tell me? Python can take any number of arguments any number of parameters, n number of parameters, but we have to maintain the order. Order has to be maintained as to the first, if you are taking positional arguments, they should be first in the parameter list and then only the default arguments. And during function call, also you have to keep a watch that if you are, you have to pay very close attention at one thing, that you do not pass both type of arguments. You do not pass both two values for the same positional argument, right? Like we did, we first passed 5, so 5 got accepted into p, that is principal, and then it also found another existence of p equals 20,000, so it gave you an error, right? Okay, so tell me what should be there in this parameter list according to the question. Default values for rate and time we have to give. So that means principal amount will be taken as what? It will be taken as a positional argument, that is a required argument, and rate is 10%, they are saying. So I can write rate equals either 10, or I can simply write it, okay, I'll write it as 10%, comma, what about time? 2 years. So T equals 2. So now you can see that there is one positional argument here, and there are one positional or required argument, and there are two default arguments, right? So if I simply write here like 20,000 and run the program, my program will give the output. Tell me what values have been taken for principal, rate, and time. What values have been taken for PR and T? Tell me quickly.
20,000 for principal, 10 for rate, and 2 for time.
For rate it is 10 and for time it is 2, because we did not pass any values for rate and time over here. So it took by default 10 and 2. If I had passed any value here, like for rate I had passed 5.6, then it would have accepted 5.6 for rate, and because I did not pass anything for t equals 2, so it would have accepted 2 for time. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Students, 11. Okay. In tomorrow's offline class, a few more topics. I will tell you which topic I will be discussing there. It would be, first of all, flow of execution in a function call. I will take up that topic. And if possible, if time remains, I will take up composition. Okay. So we will be doing that. Next online class would be returning values from function. This is very important, how functions can either return a value or not return a value. So we will discuss that. So thank you everybody.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please do your self study, and I'm going to send
Thank
you
you,
some
ma'am.
questions and notes for today's class.